The events unfold in 1970, at the estate in Fernando Po. Killian is in love with a dark-skinned girl named Bisola, but they are not destined to be together. Killian was forced to leave her forever. The story then takes us to the year 2003. Clarence attended the funeral of her father, Jacobo. Daniela, Clarence's cousin, revealed that her father, suffering from dementia, was getting worse. Killian even stopped recognizing his own daughter. The girls found Killian's diary among the documents, but they were interrupted. Daniela takes care of the father. In those rare moments when he recognizes her, she cannot hold back her emotions. Clarence too cannot bear to watch it without tears. While Daniela was with her father, Clarence showed Julia, a family friend, a scrap of an old letter, apparently sent from Africa. Recognizing the handwriting of her late husband Manuel, Julia cried. Apparently, Killian regularly sent money to a certain woman and children in Africa. Even though 40 years have passed, Clarence is determined to go to Bioko. She hopes that this will shed light on her father's past, who never liked to show his feelings. Julia warned that it could be dangerous. But when Julia realized that the girl couldn't be dissuaded, she advised her to find Simon upon arriving on the island, who had been Killian's servant. Through Simon, Clarence could locate Fernando, the son of the very same woman. In his letter, Manuel wrote to Killian that he would ensure that the woman regularly received his money. Could it be that Killian had a lover in Africa? Among other things, Clarence found an old photograph. In the diary she read an entry from January 18, 1954. Killian and his brother Jacobo were about to leave their home, bidding farewell to their mother and their sister Catalina. Unlike Jacobo, who had been to Guinea several times, Killian knew nothing about life in a foreign country and had a poor command of the language. Their journey took them across the ocean. It was February 2, 1954. On the ship the guys met Manuel, who would be a doctor on the estate. Finally the journey came to an end. The ship docked at the island of Fernando Po, now called Bioko. It was on this island that Killian was born. For the first time in a long while, he and Jacobo reunited with their father, Anton. The family members work as managers on the cocoa plantation. Manuel is here primarily to study local plants and find medical applications for it. The plantation owner has assigned duties among the men. A servant, Simon, will be assigned to Killian. The owner advised Killian to be strict with the servant or he would cause a lot of trouble. Killian didn't sleep at night, rehearsing how he would talk to the servant. Could he be tough enough not to lose his authority? Simon woke Killian up early in the morning, even before dawn. Before starting work on the plantation, everyone has to line up. Killian counted the number of people in his brigade. Suddenly one of the workers said he felt unwell. Gregorio, who was in charge of all the brigades, punished him and then explained to Killian that workers always lied just to be idle. Suddenly workers began to scatter in fear from a snake in the truck. Gregorio ordered Killian to get rid of the reptile, but Killian chickened out. So acting very cold-bloodedly, Gregorio did it himself. During the day, under the blazing sun, the workers toiled in the plantation and sang. Everything here is foreign to Killian. At some point, he heard enchanting singing and followed the sounds of the voice into the jungle. Near a waterfall, Killian saw a beautiful dark-skinned girl. As soon as he was distracted for a second, the girl disappeared. Later at the market, Julia recognized Killian and approached him. They had last seen each other when they were 10 years old. Julia lives and works here, so she regularly sees Jacobo. The girl invited the brothers to dinner, which her parents were organizing in honor of the departure of the previous doctor. Killian said they would gladly come. However, the brother evidently did not share his enthusiasm. Jacobo would prefer to spend a good time elsewhere. As promised, the brothers and their father visited the luxurious home of Julia's family. Her mother advised Anton to take a vacation and return to Spain. He can't remember the last time he saw his wife and daughter. Many men working on the plantations here engage in affairs because their wives are far away. Julia clearly has feelings for Jacobo, but he is more concerned about his father, who seems upset lately. The celebration was interrupted by Jacobo's servant Nelson, who came running to report a fight among the workers in one of the barracks. Jacobo and Killian had to excuse themselves and leave urgently to settle everything. It turned out there was no fight. Jacobo wanted to escape from dinner and had ordered the servant to put on a show. Jacobo decided to introduce his brother to the local entertainment. The nightclub was filled with alcohol, dancing, music, gambling and fallen women. Jacobo was clearly in the mood for fun, but Killian felt inhibited. Nevertheless, when one of the women at their table invited him to dance, he agreed. Later, a woman named Oba took him by the hand into the jungle, where they surrendered to passion. April 24, 1954, arrived. Killian regularly writes letters to his mother and sister, telling them how the workers toil on the plantations from sunrise to sunset. Manuel studies local plants in his spare time. Killian spends weekends with the brother and his friends at the local nightclub. Killian's nighttime encounters with Oba continue. He doesn't mind spending money on it. One day, the guys attended another social gathering at the home of Julia's family. The girl was aware that there was no fight at the estate last time and didn't hide her dissatisfaction. Jacobo responded rudely and left somewhere. To smooth things over, Killian invited Julia to dance and apologized. Julia seems to find it unfair that men can do whatever they want while women have to be pious. In her upset state, the girl ran away right during the dance. Killian followed her, trying to explain himself. It was at this moment that Julia met modest and well-mannered Manuel. Suddenly the attention of all the guests was drawn to a conflict between Julia's father and a local politician, Gustavo, who views all whites as outsiders and exploiters. Julia stopped the conflict, and in the end Emilio and Gustavo reconciled. Early in the morning, Killian was awakened by a knock on the door. He thought it was Simon, but it was the father who decided to take the son somewhere. On the way, Killian shared that he missed home. Anton told the son that his home is here, where he was born. Leaving the car at the beach, they continued on foot through the jungle and finally reached a village where the local Bubby people live. In the village, Killian noticed the same girl he had seen near the waterfall before. In the present, Clarence, awaiting her flight at the airport, keeps reading the uncle's diary entries and looking at old photographs. In the past, Julia, who knew how to drive, was looking for Jacobo to tell him something. Local residents had organized a hunt in the forest and were now celebrating the event. Manuel was also here, staying close to Julia for her safety, much to Jacobo's displeasure. Julia joined the celebration. Jacobo said that this wasn't a place for a woman, but none of the other men shared this outdated view. Julia was interested in the African people and their local customs. She enthusiastically participated in wild dances. Watching this, Anton couldn't help but smile, and neither could Manuel. When Killian came to his room late at night, he got scared and fell upon seeing a snake. He immediately understood that someone had deliberately planted the snake here. Simon said he saw Umaru, one of the workers, near the house. Umaru denied his involvement, but Killian still decided to publicly punish him. Anton wanted to stop his son, but Jacobo asked the father not to intervene. Umaru continued to deny everything, but Killian did it anyway. It turned out that the snake was actually placed by Gregory, not Umaru. Now Killian had become like him. Unable to bear it, Killian hit Gregory in front of everyone. As the guy left, he lost consciousness. After some time, he woke up in the hospital. It turned out that Killian was bitten by the viper, but he managed to survive. Work on the plantation continues. The first season is coming to an end. It has been the best harvest in many years. Julia has become very close to Manuel. One day, Anton took the son to the wedding of the daughter of his old friend. In the Bubby village, the celebration was in full swing. The bride and groom were dressed in ceremonial attire. Anton translated the wedding vows for his son. He spends a lot of time with the Bubby people and knows their language. In the bride, Killian recognized the same girl he first met at the waterfall. Somehow that upset him. Soon on a rainy day, Anton ended up in the hospital. He was found unconscious. Killian and Jacobo also learned from Manuel that in recent months, their father had been taking morphine to alleviate the pain. Anton is terminally ill, and surgery is not possible. According to Manuel's prognosis, Anton has no more than a few days to live. Killian cried, unwilling to come to terms with the loss of a loved one. But alas, it is inevitable. The girl from the Bubby village, working as a nurse in the hospital, sat next to Killian to offer support. She cares for each patient with the love that Killian was never taught. Killian does not leave his father's bedside, who is struggling to speak. The son asked why he didn't come back home to his wife and daughter. Anton replied that he didn't want them to see him like this. He will wait for his wife where he is going. In the final moments of the father's life, Killian held his hand. Anton peacefully passed away. Killian cried and stayed with him for a long time. Soon the funeral took place. The girl from the hospital couldn't hold back her tears either. To support Jacobo, Julia took him by the hand. Unable to bear it, he suddenly walked away. Julia followed him and saw him crying in the jungle. In a show of support, Julia embraced Jacobo. However, when Jacobo kissed her, she pushed him away and told him never to do it again. Julia used to love Jacobo but grew tired of waiting for him. Now she is engaged to Manuel and will be faithful to him until the end. In frustrated feelings, Jacobo ran through the jungle and screamed. In the present, Clarence, Jacobo's daughter, arrived on the island of Bioko and visited her grandfather Anton's grave. Afterward, she met the plantation manager Garuz, who granted her access to the archives. Clarence wants to find Simon, her uncle's servant. It was he who acted as an intermediary, passing money from Killian to that woman through Manuel. Here, Clarence also met Iniko, who who clearly was not inclined to help but agreed to take her to the hotel. On the way, he picked up his younger brother Laha from the airport. Laha and Clarence immediately found common ground. In the evening, the young people decided to have some fun. Near the bar, Clarence bumped into a woman who told her that she reminded her of someone. The woman advised Clarence to be careful, as she might find what she's looking for. Iniko told her that this woman has a son, whose father is a white man. Clarence was drinking in the bar with the new acquaintances. Iniko was also here. The girl clearly felt uneasy. Sensing this, Iniko invited her to dance. It seems the evening went well. The next day, Clarence continued to explore the records in the archives. She is very eager to learn about her father's past, hoping that it will help her better understand herself. One day, Clarence asked Iniko if he knew a person named Simon, who should be around 65 years old now. Iniko doesn't know him but promised to help. Iniko took Clarence deep into the jungle. They ended up by the sea, surrounded by beautiful landscapes. Being one with nature gave her a sense of absolute peace of mind. Clarence had never felt anything like it before. Passion ignited between her and Iniko. Later after sunset, Iniko confessed to Clarence that he had been in prison. He was arrested simply for being bubby. Iniko is the sole survivor among 100 people and was granted amnesty. There are so many things in these parts that are beyond Clarence's comprehension. In the morning, they reached the bubby village. The locals didn't like Clarence taking photos. To avoid conflict, Iniko took Clarence to a safe place, to a barn. It was here by fate, that they encountered Simon, who had been a servant on the estate during the Spanish occupation. Many years ago, Simon vowed never to speak Spanish again, so Iniko acted as the translator. Simon said that his grandfather and Clarence's grandfather were good friends. Certainly, the names of Jacobo and Killian were familiar to Simon, who said that life with Killian had not been treated so cruelly, no matter what. Clarence couldn't learn more. Later, she told Iniko that she was looking for someone named Fernando. The thing is, her uncle had been sending money to a woman here for years. Clarence only knows that she has a son named Fernando. The girl was shocked when Iniko told her that Fernando is Laha's second name. When she showed Iniko a photo of that woman, he recognized his mother. Finally, Clarence met the love of her uncle's life. Bisola told her that life had been tough, and it was thanks to Killian's help that she and her sons survived. He never forgot them. In the presence of Clarence and the sons, Bisola shared her story. Killian returned home to Spain and stayed there for almost 3 years. During that time, Bisola and her husband Muzzy had a son named Iniko. In 1957, Killian returned to Bioko. When he and Bisola's eyes met, they realized they couldn't live without each other. Either way, Simon gained independence and was no longer a servant. At night, there was a celebration. Killian was approached by Oba, the same woman he often spent time with. However, now she no longer interested Killian. Jacobo, who was heavily intoxicated, didn't expect to see his brother here. Killian simply said that the sister and mother were okay. Suddenly gunshots rang out. Gregorio grabbed Oba and threatened her, not considering any of the bubby equal to them. Killian and Simon calmly tried to persuade Gregorio not to do anything foolish. Eventually Gregorio released Oba. Later, Killian advised his brother to return to Spain for at least a few months and spend time with the family. But it seems Jacobo is content with his current life. July 1960 arrived. Julia and Manuel already have a child. Despite this, Julia is still worried about Jacobo, whose life has fallen apart. From Bisola, Killian and Julia learned that Gustavo is wounded and hiding in the church. Unrest is growing in society. Many are dissatisfied with the Spanish occupation and hate Gustavo for his collaboration with the whites. They hid Gustavo in the trunk of the car. Military personnel searched them at the checkpoint, but fortunately everything went well. Killian and the others managed to cross the border and deliver Gustavo to the hospital. Bisola treated Gustavo's wounds and took care of him. Julia had to return home, and Killian stayed to assist Bisola. Killian is impressed by the kindness of this girl. She sees something good in everyone. Unable to hold back, Killian took her hand. Both understand that it's forbidden, but they can't help themselves. However, they were interrupted by Manuel, who had come to replace Bisola at the hospital. Killian waited for Bisola outside. She couldn't find the strength to simply walk away. It was like witchcraft. That night, the inevitable happened between them. According to the traditions of the Bubby tribe, unfaithful wives must be punished, so Bisola is very afraid. Killian promised that he wouldn't let anything happen to her. They will have to keep their forbidden romance a secret. Life on the plantation goes on as usual. Every day, Killian eagerly awaits his meetings with his beloved. They have to meet secretly at the hospital at night. Both realize how dangerous it is, but passion is stronger. December 1963 arrived. Killian is a frequent guest at Julia and Manuel's house. However, soon something disrupted the usual order of things. Simon brought Killian a letter with bad news. It turned out that Killian's sister Catalina is very ill, with no chance of recovery. Killian understands that he must return home to bid her farewell. Killian left on the next plane, leaving a letter for Bisola. Seeing her son, the mother cried and embraced him. Catalina couldn't get out of bed because she was very weak. Killian read his diary aloud to her. It was the sister who gave him this diary before he left. Meanwhile, Bisola misses her beloved very much and sent him a letter with a symbol to ward off evil spirits. One day, local residents began pelting the hospital with stones, not wanting to tolerate the Spaniards on their land. It was a warning. Jacobo returned before his brother. Learning that Killian is delayed in Spain, Bisola became sad. The first thing Jacobo did was visit Julia and tell her that in Spain, he met an amazing girl named Carmen. Julia and Manuel already have 2 children. Julia says she is happy in marriage because Manuel is a wonderful husband and father. However, Jacobo could see from her eyes that she was unhappy. He would really like to turn back time, but nothing can be changed now. Bisola cannot live without Killian. One night, as she was walking to the hospital, a car blocked her way. She tried to go around the car, but was not allowed to leave. Drunk Jacobo and his cronies got out of the car and took Bisola to the barn, where they did whatever they wanted. In the present, tearful Clarence asks for forgiveness from Bisola. Bisola told Clarence that it's not her fault at all. In the past, Simon found Bisola in the barn. She took a word from him to keep quiet about it. Simon helped her fix the dislocation. Returning to Bioko, Killian saw Bisola with abrasions. He found his brother in the hospital. Manuel explained that Jacobo contracted syphilis, and the treatment would take 3 weeks. Simon couldn't leave everything as it was and told Muzzy what had been done to his wife. Finally, Killian was able to meet with Bisola at the hospital. She lied that she had been in an accident, but her eyes gave her away. When Killian mentioned that his brother was very ill, Bisola replied, hoping that he wouldn't survive. Jacobo's 2 cronies, Dick and Pau, were found lifeless, evidently victims of revenge. At night, Killian did not leave the bedside of Jacobo, who was suffering from a fever. The next day, he went to the barn and demanded an explanation from Simon. That's when Killian learned the truth. He was reluctant to believe until the end that his brother was capable of such a thing. Killian was advised not to intervene and let Muzzy carry out his revenge. Killian immediately went to the hospital. Jacobo was feeling better and was about to hug his brother, but Killian pushed him away. Killian told him that he knew the truth. He also revealed what happened to Dick and Pau. Jacobo justified himself by saying that he was heavily drunk and didn't remember anything. Unable to bear it, Killian attacked him in anger. After finishing, Killian said that he loved Bisola. That is why he has no intention of preventing Muzzy from carrying out his revenge. Killian crossed the forest alone at night to find his only friend here and deliver a note to him. The note contained something that needed to be translated from Spanish into the Bubby language. After that, Killian came to the hospital to see Bisola and said in her native language that he was sorry. In this way, he wants to ask for forgiveness from all women who have been humiliated by people like him. All Killian wants now is to be with Bisola. However, she needs time to accept this. Killian said that time was exactly what they didn't have. They agreed to meet here tomorrow, Friday, when everyone would be at the night joint. During the day, work on the plantation proceeded as usual. In the evening, just like yesterday, there was heavy rain. Killian felt that his brother was in danger and hurried to him. Muzzy sneaked into the hospital to get revenge. Hearing footsteps, Jacobo took someone's gun. Despite everything, Killian doesn't want to lose his brother. But when Killian was on the spot, he heard gunshots. Jacobo had taken Mossy's life, who had attacked him. Jacobo threw the gun that belonged to Gregorio. Bisola, who had come in, bent over her late husband and cried. Killian told his brother to get off this island. Jacobo understood that there was no other choice, so he agreed. He only wanted the brother to forgive him. But Killian had nothing to say to Jacobo. Julia came out to see him off. It was a silent farewell. Jacobo waved at her. That same night, Killian met with Bisola, who was cutting her hair as a sign of mourning. She cannot forget that horrible sight. Now Bisola, like any Bubby woman, is obligated to wear mourning for her husband for a year. During this time, no one should see her. Only after that will she be free. For Killian, such a long separation will be unbearable, but he promised his beloved to wait for her. The year 1968 arrived. In Equatorial Guinea, the first presidential elections took place. From now on, the Spaniards were unwelcome guests here. Most of them were forced to leave the plantations and abandon their businesses. Killian is still waiting for his beloved. Gregorio is missing, but all his belongings including the passport remained in his room. For the Spaniards, Bioko is becoming an increasingly unsafe place. One day as Killian was walking along the plantation road, a car stopped near him. Locals kidnapped him, took him into the jungle, and forced him to dig a pit. Jacobo should have been in his place, but now Killian has to pay the price. It's vengeance for Muzzy. Simon intervened and stopped this madness. The men agreed to release Killian with the condition that he, along with Bisola, would leave when her mourning period ended. Simon took injured Killian to the hospital. All this time, Killian kept Bisola's letter with a symbol that wards off evil spirits. Killian made a request to Simon. When Killian recovered, he started working on the plantation alongside the laborers. When he gets tired, he sleeps better. Julia plans to return to Spain with her husband and children. She hopes that Killian will also return, but he won't go anywhere without Bisola. Julia anticipated this response and brought Bisola along with Inigo and her second son. Killian saw his beloved after a year of separation. He knew nothing about her pregnancy. Both couldn't hold back tears. Bisola said the baby's name was Fernando Laja. Killian took the boy in his arms. All Killian wants now is to live together with Bisola and the sons as a family. They tried to leave Bioko, but they were not allowed because Bisola and her eldest son are Equatorial Guineans. Certainly, Killian won't go anywhere without his family. Mass riots erupted right on the pier. Gunshots were heard everywhere. Julia, leaving the island with her husband and sons, thought she was seeing her friend Killian for the last time. Many people perished, including Nelson, a former servant of Jacobo. Soon, Bisola and Killian got married in accordance with the traditions of the Bubi people. Such a marriage would not be recognized by Bisola's people, but for her, the most important thing is what she feels. The world around them was crumbling. Soon the time when they could live and love freely would come to an end. Happiness came to an end when the order was issued for all Spaniards to leave the island. Those days were the happiest for Bisola. It was enough to give meaning to the rest of her life. Clarence returned to Spain and conveyed greetings from Bisola to her uncle. When Clarence began to sing a traditional Bubi song, Killian saw his beloved in front of him and cried. He carried their love through his entire life. After some time, Bisola received a letter from Spain. It was likely news of Killian's passing because after that, the woman walked into the ocean. The waves hit her. Some time passed. Bisola's sons flew to Spain and visited Killian's house, where they were greeted by Clarence and Killian's daughter, Daniela. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel not to miss more exciting new products. Also, the authors will be pleased if you leave your opinion in the comments.